That is us live. Hello and welcome, everyone. We have got a jam-packed schedule today. I can see, though, some of you are already in the chat telling us where you're from. So please, wherever you're tuning in from, drop it in the chat. I find it endlessly entertaining and interesting seeing our global audience. But yeah, in light of time, I'm going to pass straight over to Prolific CEO Phelim to open the conversation.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sabrina, and welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining. Really glad that you could join us today to talk to us about some of the latest trends in online data quality. We're going to discuss data quality in general, but I think specifically we're obviously aware of growing concerns of AI use in research when you're looking for human data. Specifically, there's growing concerns of both LLM use, but also now agents and operator use in survey and online research. Right. In general, there's a trend that large language models like ChatGPT have become increasingly accessible and sophisticated and hard to distinguish from real humans. And as an industry, we face this kind of growing challenge, which is how can we distinguish between authentic human responses and AI-generated answers? So prolific data quality has always been our number one priority, and we're committed to preserving authentic primary human data collection and that real human signal. And I've been doing this for over 10 years now, and one thing I've learned in this space is that there is constant change and the need to adapt to the latest challenges and threats. So today, our VP of Product, Sara Saab, is going to be answering some of our frequently asked questions about our data quality practices. Sara leads all of our product disciplines and shapes and builds the tools that enables all of our users, all of you, to access high-quality human data. She's going to be interviewed today by our senior marketer, Sabrina, who you've already heard from, and we'll demo our new authenticity check feature. So this is a tool which detects LLM misuse and uses behavioral signals to prevent AI-generated noise creeping into your data when clean human signal is what you need. Then we're going to leave plenty of time for a Q&A with the audience. Please do get involved in the chat. We're very, very keen to hear feedback and hear your questions. This is a challenge that's faced by everyone in online data collection right now, and I think a community-driven response so that we can tackle it together will get the best results in the long run. So really, really great to have you here with us today. And now I'll pass back to Sabrina and Sara to start off the discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Phelim. Sara, I'm wondering if we can start with a bit of like context setting and like how we got to having this conversation here today.
Yeah, definitely. I guess to start with, hello to everyone here with us, and really nice to hear where some of you are dialing in from. I want to start by saying I hope this is not the only conversation we have about this, but the first of many. I think we believe that challenges like this, data quality in the age of AI, and in general, the sort of challenge of high quality human data for now and forevermore is the work of many hands. It's not just an internal sort of prolific building their machines in a dark room without communicating out kind of thing. So we hope this is the beginning of sort of an open line of dialogue, and I'll talk to you about some of the tools we're going to build to help that be the case. But to quickly introduce myself, I'm Sara. As Phelim said, I lead a product here at Prolific. I work really closely on the systems that monitor and enforce data quality and hopefully keep bad behavior out of Prolific and hopefully make good behavior into great behavior over time. And in terms of how we got here, Sabrina, I think Phelim set the scene a little bit where we'll take ourselves back to the beginning of Prolific's life as an organization and the challenge that the founders, Phelim being one of them, had on their hands, which was that getting sample or data from humans on the internet was a race to the bottom. It was a matter of extracting quick labor from humans for as little amount of money as one could possibly pay. And I think Prolific's idea was, okay, hold on, let's turn that on its head and treat people well, treat them fairly, and also safeguard the data collectors and researchers who are here to engage with those humans. And I think that was the outset of Prolific and remains sort of the guiding principle. Now, I think it's probably safe to say, and I'm happy for people to sort of reflect on this with me in the chat, that the last 6 months has been a pretty scary time for online research, and I think people are unsure where the industry is going, unsure what to expect from providers and partners like Prolific. Seeing maybe news stories that are a bit scary, or experiencing sort of anomalies in their data that they don't know what to make of. So it felt like and of course we also have a viewpoint on that from our internal monitoring and measurements. And so it felt like a good time to bring our viewpoints and that of our academic and market research and AI developer community together to sort of just compare notes and make sure we're talking directly to each other. I think that's the starting point for this.
Definitely. Now, can we talk a little bit about the approach to data quality at Prolific historically?
Yeah, so we, first of all, I think the important thing to start with is, and I think most people who are familiar with Prolific know this, we recruit 100% of our own participants. They're first-party participants, and we never outsource that task, right? That is always the case. And Prolific runs a pretty sophisticated gauntlet of data quality measures and fraud checks at various points in the life cycle of a Prolific participant. That's been the case for a very long time, since inception, really. I've been at Prolific for 3 years, and the systems have evolved a lot in that time. In particular, in the last 6 to 12 months, we've doubled down and redoubled and increased our investment in this space to the point where the processes we run for data quality are now only admitting 2 out of every 5 participants who are invited to Prolific onto the system. So there's a very, very strong set of challenges right at the outset of a participant's life cycle. We also run, on top of that sort of gauntlet, we have, I think at last count, 54 unique checks that many of them are first activated during the early life cycle of a participant. These cover the sorts of areas you would expect: location, identity, behavior, uniqueness, is this a duplicate account, and other signs of sort of account linking. Then we'll continue to run at various points in behavioral triggers. And that system is a system we call protocol. It's also layered on top of some pretty heavy-duty industry standard tools. So we use bank-grade ID verification to just drill into the ID verification step in itself. If you're a participant in a particularly sort of key demographic or geography at Prolific these days, you can expect to be challenged on a live photo of your ID card, a live video of your face, a device profiling, and a match of your identification information across your waitlist and your registration, and also across our provider's database of known applicants. And that's just before you even get to the point where you can come face-to-face with anyone's tasks or studies. And on top of that, we have these 54 other checks at the moment. We're also operating a very heavy pace of innovation in this space, and we are reacting to changes in the threat vectors and the fraud attacks in the market, and we can talk a bit about that in a minute. But we are releasing code in this space almost every day at the moment, and we are introducing new patterns and looking for new fraud signals to the tune of every week, right? So this is not a fire and forget system, but rather a system that's moving as we're learning new things. On top of all that, and this is just standard as part of your sort of prolific top up, you can expect that we are running bi-weekly data quality audits that look for the axes of honesty, transparency, verbosity, and attention. And we run our own authenticity. We're going to talk a little bit about authenticity checks today, but we run our own internal models for authenticity checking those responses in the background as well to make sure they're not LLM generated. We benchmark this every fortnight, and we have a team of human reviewers who look over both sort of passively and actively in response to your data quality reports, look over cases that are worth considering in further detail. And we fairly regularly sort of do audits and sweeps of our participant pool. So that's just that's just the standard suite that we have running all the time.
Nice. And let's bring AI into the mix a little bit now. Before we get into like how that factors into data quality, can we talk a bit about how the rise of AI tools like ChatGPT has changed the landscape of research over the past year?
Yeah, so I think I think I'd be preaching to the converted to some extent among our research community who will have seen some of this, but the rise of large language models in particular is a really interesting behavioral moment for humanity, right? So we're in our internal conversations, we're talking about how does LLM use compare to the use of a scientific calculator? And nobody ever sort of pulls out a scientific calculator to calculate, a cosine and then feel like, oh my gosh, I did something really wrong. I shouldn't have done that, right? So we're not, I think it's getting to the point where, my mom and, your grandma, your auntie is using these tools as a matter of course in daily life. Now, given that backdrop, and it's not usually a malicious action, and also that some researchers are studying it. So the use of LLMs and the hybrid working between an LLM and a human is a very active area of development. We're really conscious of this not being a vilified action in a really, really sort of a brute force way or an indiscriminate way. And so instead, we try to sort of message over and over again throughout the life cycle of a prolific participant that, hey, by default, researchers don't want you using these tools. And if they do want you using these tools, they will tell you they want you using these tools. And on top of that, we are checking if you're using these tools. And so there's a fairly sort of sophisticated conversation internally about, when is LLM use a bannable offense? How many strikes does it take? How confident should our models be before we do that? Should people be warned? And I think that's an evolving conversation that, to be honest, as these things become more commonplace, will just be an increasingly active conversation for us. At the same stage, we know that if academics see LLM generated content in their responses, or AI developers see LLM generated content in their data sets, then that's polluting of the sample. And in most cases, unless people say so, they don't want it. So this is why, for example, we decided to launch the authenticity check as a third-party tool to sort of capture the moment of greatest concern or greatest need for a researcher, which is the moment somebody is on a third-party tool and not on Prolific and actually answering a question, and make sure you have a nice, clear indication of what's going on there. So I think that's sort of the most obvious way to answer your question, Sabrina. And then the other thing I'd say also is AI, the new wave of AI has also created some interesting new dynamics in other ways. The first of those is that identity fraud has evolved. And we're talking to a number of identity fraud providers across our industry. We use more than one of them, and we're in conversation with others, as well as being in conversation with sort of other players and many of our people in our research community. And we know that there is increasing sophistication to identity fraud and location fraud. We can talk a bit more about that. So again, this goes back to why we're evolving these systems in such a real-time fashion. And the third interesting point, I think, is that the rise of AI has also meant the rise of human annotation for AI, which has brought a lot of eyes to the topic of fair compensation and fair work for online crowd workers, which I think is a very positive thing. But it also has meant that as the standards for what is fair compensation for participants has increased through this, a prolific account or account by another sort of survey provider or data collection platform is now worth more money than it was. And there's a new calculus about the sort of value of these accounts to someone who has bad intentions, and that means a rise in sophistication in some of the attack vectors, which we say this plainly. I don't know if everyone is saying that plainly on the market, but certainly everyone is noticing and feeling that across both the sort of providers who do the identity verification and other fraud and KYC controls, and the people who run panels and run human data platforms and things like this. So three different interesting points around the rise of AI and how that's affecting Prolific and others in our ecosystem.
Nice. Thank you so much for that. And I'm just wondering if we can talk a little bit more again about how Prolific specifically approaches the increase of use of AI in responses. We've talked a little bit about it, but what does it look like when we are developing things like authenticity check, and what are the things that we're thinking about next even?
Yeah, great. And I think, Sabrina, not quite ready for a demo from me, right? My little techie heart is waiting. But let me say a bit about the thinking behind authenticity check and what might come next as far as our suite of tools. So I think a fun fact about authenticity check, which is, and I'll show this to you in a second, everyone, but this is our tool for integrating Prolific's proprietary LLM detection into Qualtrics Gorilla Experiment Builder or Prolific's own AI Task Builder where it's native. This tool is actually a tool we've released off the back of tooling we've been using internally for a very long time. So something like authenticity check runs during participant onboarding. It's a slightly different version, but this has been making evaluations on participant fraud scores for a very long time. As most of you know who use Prolific, most data collection on Prolific in the academic space happens on tools like Qualtrics, right? So there was always this sense of, we can't really, how do we help? How do we help people ascertain that the data they're collecting on Qualtrics is up to standard? And alongside sort of the evolution of tools like Qualtrics, who are working on their own suite of bot detection and fraud detection, we've now got a pretty simple tool that you can plug into free text questions in Qualtrics and come back to Prolific and see right beside the rest of your submission metadata whether or not we judge the submission to be good quality or not, or authentic or not in particular. So that's the first thing about this, which is, it's a tool that has existed for a while. We just want to put it into the hands of our research community. And actually, we're going to take this approach more and more often. And another thing you will see coming down the line, everyone, is more tools for grading and more nuance to the grading of your data quality on Prolific. You'll be able to give us a more nuanced feedback on whether you think something was up to scratch or not. We hear from you very often that reject versus approve is a little bit crude. I think most of us have, you have ethics boards and IRB boards, and we are also signed up to Fairworks and Partnership on AI and various bodies that keep us accountable. So we know that we don't want to reject people outright in mass cases, right? That's not fair and sometimes not ethical. But there's certainly a case where, a one-word answer is not as good as a really thoughtful response that's 15 sentences long. And we're going to give you more tools to be able to tell us about stuff like that so we can form a wider picture of a participant's quality. And in addition, we've already got a data quality report form that many of you use to communicate with us about cases you're unsure of or suspicious of. We're going to make the access to that a little bit more, easy to access, right place, right time, right from the submissions screen. So that's coming down the line. Those data quality reports are treated extremely urgently and by humans on our side. So you can always be assured that they're looked at on a fairly rapid SLA. And I think we're generally thoughtful and try to see things exactly the way you do as we're looking through those. So just some stuff that's coming down the line. Also, right now, what Authenticity Check does is assess behavioral cues, and I'll talk a bit about how it does that and sort of the data around it, Sabrina, and as we go through the demo and afterwards. But it assesses behavioral cues on free text questions for telltale signs of LLM use. Now, we do have a roadmap for it where we take the word authenticity a little bit further, and we look at integrating things like patterns that might be related to the use of an agentic AI during a data collection, patterns that may indicate geolocation fraud. So we're hoping that the authenticity piece becomes more and more rich over time with your feedback and help. I think I will also say the product is still in beta. We really wanted to get it into your hands more so than we wanted to make sure it was working in every variant of every case. So if you're seeing anything that needs help, we have a team ready to sort of triage people's installations and uses of Authenticity Check. Let us know your feedback. We'll continue to improve and work on this tool.
Wonderful. I will just quickly say we can see your questions. We're going to have time for Q&A at the end. And I think actually the demo we're about to do will probably answer some of the questions. Sara, if you don't mind, take us to demo.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to start on a boring screen maybe, but a really informative screen, which is our researcher help center. So I think that the team is planning to share all of this documentation in chat as well, right? So I think the way to do this, and I've been through this process myself as if for the first time in recent weeks, is to just follow this step by step. There are a couple of places where it gets a little technical, which I'll walk you through right now. But once you've done it once, it's really easily repeated and doesn't require much thought. So there's a nice little researcher help center article on how to do this. And we're going to jump into the Qualtrics integration guide for a second. Here we have sort of the specific instructions for Qualtrics. I'm going to take your attention to the scariest thing I'll tell you today, which is that there's a piece of JavaScript here. So this piece of JavaScript does the magic, and you will add this to the header of your Qualtrics study. I'm going to show you in just a second. With your token here replaced. Again, I'm going to show you what token you want to add in that spot, and then we also have some code that you will add to each of your questions, which is linked here, and I will show you what that looks like in a moment as well. But once you've sort of seeded your Qualtrics header and your Qualtrics free text questions with the JavaScript, that's all you have to do. And I think people are also expecting to have sort of pressed a button or turned something on. Nope. If it's working, you will see it on the submissions page, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. There's very similar instructions for Gorilla. And if you're using the prolific AI task builder, you don't have to do anything at all. You just run a free text question and you immediately get this by default. And this is free to all our data collectors, all our researchers across industry. So now that I've shown you that, I'm gonna jump into Prolific for a second. And I'm gonna take you to this API tokens step over here. This is the part that you this is the piece you follow to get your token piece that you're gonna replace. So you click create authenticity check token. You can call it anything you like at all, and you click create, And it's going to create something that looks like this. I'm not going to reveal it because it's personal, but it's a very long alphanumeric code, and you just want to grab that onto your clipboard when you're ready and replace it into your piece of JavaScript. So that's your preparation to do this, and we're going to jump over to Qualtrics for a second. And if you give me a second just to get my credentials in there. Cool. So here we are in Qualtrics. And here's a survey that I was setting up earlier. I will also note that you cannot inject JavaScript into Qualtrics studies if you're in the Qualtrics free plan. I don't think that will affect many people, but if that's the case for you, you may want to explore Gorilla or the Prolific AI Task Builder. So here I have a very simple 2-question study. Prolific ideas being piped through. Again, if that's unfamiliar to you, there's some really nice instructions on the Help Center about how to do that. And then I've asked people 2 questions here. Write 1 to 2 facts you know about Trump's U.S. tariff proposals using full sentences, and write 1 to 2 facts you know about the new pope being chosen. Spoiler alert: everyone's watched Conclave. It comes through really clearly in the responses. So those are my 2 questions, and I have a redirect. So super simple Qualtrics survey. And all I have to do to enable authenticity check on this is if I go to look and feel, which kind of governs the survey at the top level inside Qualtrics. This sometimes takes a moment to load. And I go to general. Here you have this piece called header. And you'll remember that script that I showed you earlier. That script is what you will drop in here, with the only variation being that you will have added your API token where it said your token in the Help Center. That's it. You literally just copy paste it in there. Then you have one more step and you're good to go. If we go back to the survey flow, not the survey flow, we go back to the questions here. You, for every question, as you have it selected, you want to scroll down to where it says JavaScript. And again, the researcher help has these scripts ready for you to copy paste. You want to drop the JavaScript into each of your questions that you want monitored. You can have multiple. And here's the most tricky part, and I promise you we'll fix this in an upcoming product release. The most tricky part is your final question of your set has slightly modified JavaScript, which is, again, shown and listed in the Researcher Help Center article. The only reason for that, you can see it's slightly different. The only reason for that is that this JavaScript tells this code, hey, send all the results back to Prolific, we're done. So that's all that is. Publish your survey, link it to your Prolific study, and you're golden. So I'm going to show you a couple of quick tips of the trade for minimizing LLM use via your study setup, and then I'll show you what the results of authenticity check look like. So if we go back to my Prolific account, and I go into my projects, and I go into my drafts, and here is the draft study for the Qualtrics survey that I was just showing you. So first thing to say is, so writing tasks are a little bit of Marmite for our participant community, and probably for all humans, right? Like who among us enjoyed writing our essays at university? Some, I did, right? But not everyone. So it's always really good practice to be pretty explicit if you're going to require a writing, so that people can self-select out, and they don't want to be surprised once they've already devoted time to your survey or your study. So it's always really good to just let people know that writing tasks are coming and how much writing to expect. And that's also helped by this study label for writing, which then appears to a participant right away on their study card. The other thing is deterrence, right? So we find that if you tell people not to use an LLM, you actually cut the incidence of LLM use by 61% in our internal benchmarking. Such a cheap thing to do. to get a much better, much more authentic sample of human data. So that's another good practice. Then there's nothing here that's particularly interesting or exciting as far as how I've set this up. I'm going to show you the results of another very similar study that had exactly the same screeners. I've made regional selections here. It's a standard sample. And then the other thing I would encourage always is if there's a writing task in your study, if you don't want people to shortchange you, make sure you are setting the duration fairly and setting the reward fairly, right? Like this is another way to make sure that the game theory of your data collection is fair on both sides and helps a lot. So that's how to set up a sort of a good study as far as measures to reduce inauthentic results. And then if we drop into the results of this data collection, I'll show you the one I created earlier. Completed. I think this one is the one that has. So you know it's working when you see the little indicator and the new column. Didn't have to activate it in any way other than setting up my API token and dropping my script in. And in my case, all 5 of my respondents, all 5 of my participants have checked out green, and authenticity check is happy with them. You can see in the hover text that it says 0 of 2 free text responses flagged. This doesn't look like that if the authenticity check is failing. So to show you what that looks like really quickly. So here's a much bigger study where authenticity check is flagging people in certain cases. So you get a mixed bar if authenticity check is flagging more than 0 of the responses. And it's full red when every one of your free text questions for that submission has been flagged as LLM use. So there you go. On top of that, we have a policy for how to action rejections on the back of this. TLDR, as long as you've been fair and you're not sort of baiting people into doing online research and then banning them for LLM use and various other caveats, you can reject a submission if you see any red against it. Obviously, we will make sure that cases are appealable and mediated well. And if a participant feels like this wasn't fair, that we will take a look at that. But the rejection policy allows you to reject on the back of this. We don't have a ton of sort of bulk handling tools just yet. It's a very early beta, but I'm sure we will add them, and I'm sure you will want them. So more to come on that. But I think that is authenticity check in a nutshell. I think my colleague, to sum us up, has this really beautiful little sort of one-page mock-up. So new column will appear when you run authenticity checks. Red, green, or mixed bar shows as the responses come in. 0 of 1 in this case. 1 was flagged in this case. And you can reject them if appropriate. So pretty simple demo overall. Yeah, I think that's all the points I wanted to get across on this, Sabrina. That's authenticity check.
Hopefully. Thank you so much. We have got a lot of questions rolling in, but I think my last question for you might answer a fair few of them. I'm just wondering, before we pass over to full Q&A, beyond authenticity checks, what are other study design recommendations you have for researchers that are concerned about AI use or even data quality in general?
Yeah, really good. So I've covered a few of them in terms of good practice for study design. So deterrence is really powerful, and that's like a pretty durable result from studies of humans in such settings. You can block copy paste in Qualtrics. That's a really good measure. Look, I think all of this and data quality in general is from now on, we're all in this together. I'm going to be really honest. This is a moving target from now on, right? We all have to put all of our best knowledge together to stay across this and actually a few steps ahead. I feel really optimistic that is exactly what we'll do. And not only will we do that, but we'll do it in a way that's fair. But we also need your help and community on these things. So blocking copy and pasting just makes it that little bit harder and less tempting to do the deed, right? So there's that. use standard attention checks per Prolific's 2 attention check policy. That's always so bad behavior or bad data quality is not a matter of sort of one thing being poor quality and everything else generally being sterling behavior. It tends to happen as sort of their clusters of behaviors, right? So attention checks are protective. Don't ask a leading screening question. Follow good practice for screening. Make sure people know that you have a writing task coming. Use the approval rating screener. We also use the approval rating screener, and then read your answers. Read your free text questions. Eyeball them. Even if you're just doing a quick sort of sanity check report and a data quality report, if there's something you don't like there. I will also say I forgot to mention some stats on the authenticity check, and I wonder if we've had some questions on that. So we trained authenticity check on a corpus of prolific respondent data. We have a long history of prolific respondent data. We generated some new data for training these models, and we also benchmarked authenticity check again in a sort of internal study by our science team. And in that study, we gave people different instructional protocols. So for you, we want you to definitely use an LLM. For you, we want you definitely not to use an LLM. We'd like you to do online research, but not use an LLM, et cetera, et cetera. And we found that the authenticity check has a precision of 98.7%, and it has a recall of 78.7%, if I'm not mistaken. So it's pretty good at being right when it flags, and it misses about 1 in 5 true cases. But interestingly enough, it is not very effective at capturing sort of tab switching online research type behaviors. So it's quite good at capturing LLM use, not as good at capturing sort of, I did a bit of Google searching about Pope Francis and I brought back the answer. We're actually not quite sure why. It's probably something to do with the behavioral cues in either case being a little bit different. But this is another part of the sort of innovation track on this, is to understand that behavior and also make some decisions about, is online research by default good? Is online research by default bad? What if there's an AI summary at the top of your online research? So there's like complicated questions about human-computer interaction in here, but just a little bit of stats on authenticity check as well.
Thank you. I think that will have answered a fair few questions. We will get to questions now. I'm just going to bring Phelan back. Phelan, welcome back. Go through the questions. Before I get started, I'm going to make the caveat that we have less than 10 minutes left. And there are a lot of wonderful questions. But the good news for you in the chat is that I am responsible for a lot of the communications that come out about authenticity check. And we can definitely endeavor to answer your questions, even if we don't get to them right now. The first question that actually I want to address is, I think encompasses a fair few questions here, is from Carl, and it is just, are the results of that internal research available to read yet?
That's a really good question, and I think I don't want to throw my my colleagues in the science team under the bus as far as whether they feel it's ready to share externally, but I think we could find out. Certainly there's lots of really good data in that. I think the one thing I'll say is, if you remember, if we go back to my point earlier about fraud sophistication is such that people who are trying to crack prolific accounts or are sort of handing out LLMs for bad actors to use on prolific are probably also quite interested in webinars like this, and also things like the publication of exactly how authenticity check works and in what cases it's a little bit weaker. So I think we're trying to balance our massive urge for transparency with our research community with the fact that probably this information will get into that hands that can do something with it. But I think there's probably some version of the research on the benchmarking that we can share, and Sabrina and Phelan and I can look into that.
Definitely. There's another question here about kind of rejecting participants, and basically what is the threshold? Is it that there's any LLM use? Is it that that bar is fully read?
Great.
Don't know if we have any insight on that.
I think any LLM use is a fair game for rejection, as long as you have set up the study in a fair way. If I can throw in an answer to Koji's question while we're at it as well. We think the incidence in sort of normal behavior on products like ours is about 10% with no instructions. It's lower in the UK and a bit higher in the US, at least on prolific. We're still investigating why. But that, as I said earlier, that will reduce by about 60% with clear instructions not to.
Excellent. Also, if either of you spot any questions that you really want to answer, by all means, cut me off. But I thought this is also a good question from Jack. Could the authenticity checker be overcome by participants asking the LLM to write their responses in a certain way, such as including intentional spelling mistakes?
Great question. No, because we are not doing a content analysis. We're doing behavioral analysis. So we're looking at the ways that people naturally sort of interact with a interface, and the way that they naturally pause and start and stop when they're answering questions. The obvious sort of weakness is hand typing, right? But again, the idea here isn't to come up with the master key that stops it all. The intention here is to introduce layers of friction that make this just not worth it, right? At what point is it worth it to type out a response from an LLM when you've been asked for your opinion on X, Y, Z, or so I think it's really about increasing friction. Now we are keen on potentially content analysis down the line. Content analysis is a bit ropier on the wide internet. I think I think it's a bit more. We're not sure about its reliability. We don't want to penalize those of our participant community who are not native English speakers, for example, or have a slightly different diction. So I think there's a bit of thought to go into that. But at the moment, no, that's not a way that you can game it. Certainly, you can game it, right? Like any fraud check can be gamed, but not through content steps.
Nice. Okay, I've got another question here, which I am curious about our response for. It's from David, and it was a little bit further up in the chat. I'm sorry if people struggle to find it, but it basically says, what do you think about the possibility or the possible use of solutions similar to university exam taking software like Lockdown Browser? That would seem to be the highest possible security, but with the sacrifice of privacy.
Phelim, do you want to have a go at this? I can see you look thoughtful. Yeah,
happy to take this one. I think in general, approaches like that could work, and there's a range of different data collection tools that you could use, which I think will have additional checks. We feel like this is one part of the overall solution. As Sara mentioned in her comments earlier, there's a range of different research on prolific, some of which does allow for AI use. So we wouldn't want to provide a solution which it entirely locks it down, more that it gives you the signal that you can use to incorporate with the rest of your data to make an informed decision in the context of your research.
Nice. Now, I'm very conscious we're coming up to time, and there are a lot of questions here that I think just require a lot more time than that to answer. If there are any that either of you really want to answer, by all means, but just to leave everyone else rest assured, we will have the records of this chat, and we will also have emails attached to your questions, so we can definitely endeavor to address a lot of these. One question that I really wanted to get to before we leave is from Peter, and it is the authenticity check going to be expanded to other platforms?
Yes, I think in short, we are keen on this. I think right now it's driven by JavaScript. For tools that don't have JavaScript entry, we need to talk to those collaborators and partners to integrate with them, basically. So that would be the next step. But yes, the plan is to expand it both to new tools and also to new modalities of sort of authenticity checking. Sabrina, I don't know if we have time just to hit Nathan's question around fairness. So I think, I love this question because this is exactly why sort of the job is hard, right? And I think, so we have an internal joke about how all of us would be banned if we tried to sign up for Prolific. And it's because we're all on VPNs internally as part of our work policy, right? So it's the case in every fraud pattern or a potential fraud pattern that we're analyzing, that we have to balance how many false true positives we catch versus how many false positives we catch. And we're not in the business of messing participants around. We're not here to give them a absolutely sort of unpredictable experience and yank Prolific away from them without explanation. But we also understand how important data integrity is to researchers. So almost every conversation is about the right balance to strike. I think 0.6% is not nothing. 1 in 200, let's say. There is a mediation flow, and this also kind of goes to Kimberly's question about screen readers, which we don't think will be affected. We're doing some more analysis on this, but the tool is pretty heavily fit to LLM use in particular. But there's a mediation process. There always is between participants and researchers for unfair rejections. We're trying to do things in the right way, and I think perhaps those of you in the chat who use Qualtrics and other tools like it are also interested in sort of the geolocation tagging and the latitude, longitude tagging and IP address sort of unmasking that some of those tools have. We have a similar issue with those tools, which is that sometimes they point to something suspicious. Sometimes they point to IPv4 is running out on the internet, so service providers are clubbing bunches of people under one, and I think it's called CTNAT or CGNAT or something. This is a thing that will continue happening as IPv4 runs out. And then we have, Apple iCloud Private Relay, which masks people's geolocation by default, and people who are increasingly privacy conscious are thinking a lot about protecting their location at all times. So. And in addition, a lot of the best participants are the ones who are most conscious about their geolocation being discovered. And so we're constantly having these really sort of intricate balancing conversations. And I think, if you take a key message away from me today, it's that help us with that, help us find the signal and not the noise, right? And help us sort of find the right participants to catch through these checks and not the wrong ones.
I think to really quickly just add to that, one is just to re-emphasize the point that this is one signal amongst many. So maybe you don't want to use this as a binary reject data point, but something to include in a broader analysis of data quality. Also to note that even if you choose not to use this as a rejection mechanism, if you do use authenticity check, we will be able to get that data and then aggregate it with all of the other data points we have to build a more informed picture of a participant over time and generally improve the quality of the pool overall. And then the other thing I would say is this is very much a V1, and with increased use and feedback from you all, we will improve the detection rate and the level of sophistication of the tool over time. So this is certainly not the final solution. It's the first step. As we've noticed, restricted to free text responses, we'll work to expand the number of platforms, the types of data that can be used on, and hopefully partner with some folks like Qualtrics to improve the kind of overall feedback loop between the platforms. So this is not the kind of the final solution, but just the first step.
Excellent. On that note, I'm just going to quickly do a quick plug for the feedback survey that I'm about to put in the chat. And I'll pass over to Phelim for some closing remarks because I know we're over time.
Brilliant. All right. Thank you everyone. And really, really appreciate to all of the questions and the engagement from our audience. There's absolutely tons of super valuable questions that we will make sure to respond to after the webinar. As we discussed, right, AI use can be used well when used transparently and with consent, and our authenticity check feature is intended to detect misuse and AI-generated noise, and really reinforce the ability to get clean human signal when that's what you need. As I mentioned, this is a first iteration. We would really value your feedback, both on this webinar and on the feature. As if you're an early user of this feature, we would be very keen to hear about your use of it, how you found it, and we're very keen to hear from anyone doing research in this space. Even if this is an area that you're exploring, you're no doubt dealing with the challenges either directly or indirectly. So please keep an eye out for an email following this webinar. We're really keen to get as much feedback from the community as possible. Our ability to stay ahead on data quality relies on everyone's feedback and contribution. So we're very grateful for everyone's work in this area.
Brilliant. Thank you all so much. See you later.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciated your time.